What's the Supreme Court position, and how many people do you think would be the best or most qualified to be on the Supreme Court? A topic that you know nothing about, which makes you perfect representatives of the average American or global citizen. What do you think?
I'd say they have experience being like a judge for like at least 20 years or something.
I would say the same thing, like in the way that there's probably not that many people who could do like the best job, because it's a really specified position that, like, I mean, if you have a lot of experience being a judge, I guess that's kind of like the most qualified you can get for it.
So what would be the best job?
Like knowing the Constitution really well and knowing how to enforce it in a court of law, and
How to think about it. When you say
Yeah.
enforce it, you mean how to think about it.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. What else? What do you think being a judge does for either of you? Like, what does actually being a judge teach you about being a judge? Like, why is that important?
I think they need to be able to make decisions that represent like the greater good, not necessarily personal decisions, but something that would benefit like our country as a whole.
And what kind of judge then? Well, hang on. Can I back up a little bit? You just said make decisions. I make decisions all the time. I'm thinking about the country. I'm thinking about all these very complicated issues, and I'm thinking it through. So would I be qualified?
No.
Because
You're like on the Supreme Court, you're making decisions that more deeply impact individuals' lives than just making an everyday decision like, oh, am I going to go to work today?
it
Listen.
needs to be someone who can, in a way, put aside their opinions and really just focus on what the Constitution means by saying certain things.
do you have any idea where it's laid out? Who is qualified to be on the Supreme Court? Do either of you have any idea where that is laid out, where it's discussed?
I have no idea.
I wouldn't expect you to, by the way.
I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
Okay, but you have the idea that at some point it's got to be people who are really who are trained at some level and have experience. It must be somewhere that that's the case,
Yeah.
right?
I'd hope so.
You hope so? Why do you hope so? Because it's kind of working.
Well,
Why do
like,
you hope so?
I'd hope that it's laid out like who should be on our Supreme Court and who shouldn't, like based on qualifications. I feel like if they're just picking anybody because of like who they know and like what their political opinion is, then it's probably not doing its job correctly.
You mean kind of like how the rest of the country, how the entire country is run,
Yes.
right? On nepotism, largely. This is from 2015. So this is before, this goes only up to 2017. So the last three, Trump's picks are not part of this. But most, but not all, have had some kind of legal background. And when we go back to, the first 100, 150 years, legal background, so-called law school, wasn't what law school is today. But 104 had some kind of private practice. Only 68. So these don't add. There's 112 here, but some of them go into multiple slots, right? Like you have private practice, and you were a judge for a few years, and you were in an elected office, kind of thing, right? But only 68 of them actually worked as a judge at all, and some of those worked as a judge in like small local and state and county kind of environments. They weren't like federal judges and stuff, and they didn't have a lot of experience, right? There are some people, in fact, 4 of our current Supreme Court justices, the most recent one, not the most recent, but Elena Kagan has no judicial experience at all. And 3 of them, including John Roberts, who's the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, has very little judicial experience. I mean, very little, minimal, right? So before he was brought onto the Supreme Court. So, these are the backgrounds. So anybody can be on the Supreme Court, by the way. So I can be on the Supreme Court. So now we say all right, well, where's this laid out and how's it laid out? And then let's look at the next slide. So here, these are just the 68 judges. This is the experience they have, right? So 45 only have state, county, and city court experience. City court experience. Like you're a judge in New York City or you're a judge in Baltimore, and then, you end up on the Supreme Court. This isn't years and years and years, working as a federal appellate court judge or something, right? So we have all these people who are out there with kind of greater or lesser degrees of experience and say like, all right, well, what's that mean? So now what's just, okay, what are some thoughts, right? So like, So you were saying, I hope so. You were saying like, yeah, you could be a judge for 20 years. Well, what if you're a city judge for 20 years and then you end up on the Supreme Court?
I mean, I feel like from that, all of those categories are involved enough in the government and like law to be able to have a background knowledge of things that the Supreme Court might discuss.
So what knowledge though? Like, what do you mean? Like, what knowledge?
Well, like you have to know the Constitution and like.
Do you really? I mean, really? No, I mean, I'm just going to push back on that. Like, what? Okay, you got to know the Constitution. Yeah, you got to know the Constitution at some level, right? But what else? What do you need to know? I want to just push on because this is really important for where we go today.
I feel like it's a little like concerning that not all of them have had like federal level judicial like jobs or like positions. I don't know why someone would be elected to be on the Supreme Court if they haven't had that experience, because you need to be able to understand how like decisions are made and like when you make a decision, how it affects everything. Like,
Okay.
I feel like they should have experience with like big cases and how it turned out based on like their verdict.
Well, okay, but people do, right? These are, even if we go back to, the 1820s, right? And people are in a judgeship somewhere, but, they're not running like it's not like the ninth district or something like that. But, people are thinking through and they're good thinkers and they're able to very carefully think about issues and weigh them and really sort through stuff and like, okay, all right, that's good. That's the best it's like you learning the restaurant trade, right? You get there and you say, man, I don't really understand any of this. But, slowly, day after day, you start to really grab onto it. And like, okay, you're here, you're a pretty good thinker, you've got it down a little bit. And then you start, now you're in this world of the courts, right? And you say like, okay, all right, let me just keep digging away at this. I'll keep thinking, right? And pretty soon, you start seeing the consequences of all these things, and then you become a pretty good thinker, right? Like teachers, do you have a thought? Do you have a response to that?
Yeah, I was just like thinking about it. Like, obviously, when you're working a job like at a restaurant, you pick things up over time, but I don't know if it's necessarily smart to have people pick things up while they're working on the Supreme Court.
Well, you're working with other people, though,
Yeah.
right? So they're always people. And so you're part of a team. And maybe, you don't need some people on the team, they do certain things really well and other people do. Clarence Thomas, for example. You know who Clarence Thomas, right, on the courts? You all know who Clarence Thomas is. If you don't know, he's one of our Supreme Court justices. He didn't speak in the court at all in the middle of a case. He didn't speak for something like 22 years, this guy. He never said a word. Like people come in and they argue a case in front of the court and the court's sitting there and they're popping questions at him and I'm like one of the lawyers and I'm trying to argue my case and you all are on the Supreme Court and you're just hammering me with stuff and what about this and that and the other thing. Clarence Thomas didn't speak for like 22 years. He wrote stuff, but he didn't speak. He just sat there listening. So it's like, okay, everybody has their strong points and weak points. So I said, all right, so who's qualified? Who's qualified, right? How many people are qualified in the United States to be on the Supreme Court? I started asking myself this question, right? And I said, well, let me try to count up who's qualified. Let me count some people. Like I'm going to leave out the sociology professors and so on. We're gonna just stick with people with legal experience, although that's not necessary. You don't have to have legal experience, but we're going to stick with that just to make it easier. You know what I mean? Because I doubt a president in this day and age is going to be able to push through a sociology or anthropology professor or an English literature professor to be on the Supreme Court. I doubt that's going to happen. So let's stick to the ones with legal experience, okay? So take a look. U.S. federal judges, 1,700. That includes Article 3 judges. So Article 3 judges are the judges according to Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution. They're the judges that are appointed by the president. That's what we're arguing about all the time, right? Like Biden's trying to send through all these judges, and Trump was trying to do it, and then the other side doesn't let him go through, and so on. So 1,700 U.S. federal judges, right? State judges, about 30,000. Okay, so that's a lot. Some of the federal judges have very little experience because they just got put on, including just like last week, they brought like 5 people up onto the courts. Some of the state judges, same thing, but some of the state judges have been on, and U.S. federal have been on for a long time, 10, 15, 20 years, right? Law school professors, okay, so about 15,000 in the United States. U.S. states attorneys, these are the attorneys that are arguing, U.S. federal cases. And then other people who work at the Department of Justice, or they hold some kind of political office, or I don't know however many that would be, right? But these would be the people, just if we think about legal issues, these would be the people who are qualified, let's just say, right? Some of them more so than others. Are we good? Is that fine? Is that fair that we would say that? We would go there? I mean, do you have any questions about that?
I just think it's interesting. I just think it's interesting that there seem to be so many people with so much experience, and then the people, like the other chart you just showed us, was like they didn't have that experience.
Well, no, hang on. No. Go back to the other.
If
we take some of these people, go back one more. Some of these people who are federal judges, right? They were also maybe a prosecutor, or they worked in the Justice Department, or they were professors, or something like that, or they worked in the military. Maybe they were like judge advocates, like the what they call JAGs. So so go forward. One more, yeah. So a lot of these people had lots of experience in different areas, right? Okay. So, but this is I'm just sticking with just their legal experience. They actually have a lot of experience. There are a lot of those folks who are college professors taught in law schools and that sort of thing, right? So who's the most qualified or the best person? Remember the question. So of all those people that I laid out, who's the most qualified or the best person? Like, where would you start?
I think I would start looking in the 1,700 of people with positions.
Federal judgeship positions?
Yeah.
Wait, but you think what about if you're working on the state Supreme Court for 30 years and you're in a federal judgeship position for 10 years? State Supreme Court's pretty serious, right? So but you'd start federal. Where else would you go?
I would probably see like how long they've been working, because like you said, some people were just not like put on the courts like a week ago.
Okay, all right. What about professors? Because you have to be pretty smart to be a professor in law school, I would think.
I feel like I would consider them, but I would also look to see what other experience they have, maybe besides that.
Okay, so we're coming back to this, most qualified. So how many people do you think are most qualified?
When I hear the word most, I'd probably say maybe like somewhere under 100.
Okay, okay, we'll say 100, all right? Let's go.
Okay.
Go to the next slide. Okay, so here. So I count all those people up, and we got 46,700, right? 46,793. Or more, there's more, but whatever. I got to come up with a number, right? So I assume, 1% of them have a sufficient amount of experience that would make them like, okay, you're reasonably qualified. Got it? 1% of you, the top 1%, right? It's kind of like, I don't know, whatever that is. So we're going to go with, okay, you have enough experience and you're talented thinkers. That's 468 people. Okay, that's a random number. I just made that up. I was sitting at my desk. I'm just going like, whatever. I got to come up with a number. Boom, 1%. There it is. Does that feel okay? Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So then I said, go to the next slide. I said, all right, but that's still too big for me, right? Because this is the Supreme Court. This is really big. So I said, what if we just take the exceptional 20% of that group? And we would 94. Okay? Does 94 feel pretty good?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, is that cool? 94 feel all right for you, bro? 94 people are qualified to be on the Supreme Court. Of all these people out there working, it's like, yeah, okay, you guys got it. You've done a lot of work. You're cool. You can handle it. 94.